Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is our last show of the day. I was asked by my presenter whether they can be a bit longer than we agreed. I told them we have all the time of this evening till the social event. So in about 2 hours, I guess we'll be done. So joking, of course. Again, to repeat what I said in the previous room, maybe some of you were there. Those who are not here don't know what they are missing. We are going to talk about critical communications, and the hosts, let's say, of this session are we from TCCA. TCCA is the Critical Communication Association, the world's largest association for critical communications. Well, in 2 seconds, we'll strictly define what is critical communication. But just to introduce presenters and panelists this evening. So, my name is Mladen Vratonjic. I'm chairman of the board and director of TCCA. Here is Tero Pesonen, who is vice chair of the board, but more important, he is head of critical communications broadband group. Those guys who are with standards bodies are defining the future of critical communications. Here we have Duncan Swan, who is chief operation officer of British UPCO. That perhaps tells nothing, but when we tell you that he is involved from the beginning in TCCA activities, I think there is only one CCW World Congress that you missed, we had more than 23, 24 World Congresses, and with huge experience in doing things and advising people how to do things. So Duncan, and we have Wolfgang Kampichler, PhD from 2004, I think, one of the main innovators and technology gurus of Frequentis, our member and prominent telecommunications company. So for the beginning, I'm going to just give a very short introduction. So what are critical communications? I learned, with all apologies to you who exactly know what is it, but I felt this need to do it several times just to say a few basics about critical communications. So critical communications are radio communications, which are very important for performing certain tasks, functioning of some agency or service, or for completing the mission. What does it mean? First, we say it can be mission or business critical. Mission critical are all public safety, and you are most belonging to this community here, I guess. And business critical is communication that's vital for different manufacturing, transport, airports, manufacturing gas, oil, electricity, and so on. It can be analog or digital. Don't be surprised, there are still maybe 30 or 40% critical communications on the earth analog. It can be voice only, it can be voice plus data, it can be narrowband and it can be broadband, and it can be also narrowband and broadband, it can be hybrid, but it must provide availability wherever, all the time, capacity and coverage, security, encryption, data protection, and other features that are not necessary in usual ordinary communication. Redundancy, resilience, reliability, those famous 3 R's. And, of course, quality of service, preemption, priority for voice, data, and video. In the beginning, there was a word. I will say there was voice. It was quite simple. It was quite simple. The citizens call a certain number and tell their message. They type a little bit, find the location, and send it to the responders, and they go in field to act. This model, of course, can be different, but I just have chosen one of the models. But now the things are becoming more and more complicated. Now we may send SMSs, and we can send data, of course, to our PSAPs, and we can send some video that we made. And if there is a car crash, then the e-call will come from that car. And with all this data coming to call taker, He will use his own data sources, like databases, different servers, social networks, GIS, geolocation, video surveillance cameras from the location where something was reported, and try to push this information to first responders. And this, in the circle, is roughly said to be critical communications, meaning all this information that are received in control rooms need to be processed, real information taken out of data and sent to the first responders. So the situation is not anymore simple. Before it was just a radio. You talk with your radio, with your peers. Now it is data, it is video. There is much more. Here are the generations of critical communications, more or less the same as I spoke now, with one important thing to remember. Before, critical communications were standards for themselves. So Tetra is a standard by ETSI, but it's used for critical communications, for nothing else. Now we have more critical communications migrating to global standards. So the global standards generated by 3GPP, like 4G and 5G, or LTE and 5G, however you want to call them, and 6G that is coming, they incorporate also critical communications features and network, but Tero will tell you more about how they are made. Here is TCCA. What are we doing in all this thing? We try to empower critical communication users for a safer society, to promote the critical communications market and solutions to global audience, to drive the evolution of critical communications worldwide and provide a platform for exchange of experience. We support open and standardized mobile critical communication. Tero will tell you more why it is so important, and we can discuss also during our panel. We are market representation partner of 3GPP, and 3GPP is a body who develops very important standards of mobile telephony nowadays. Our members are users, operators, all big users, all big operators, including FirstNet, British Home Office, French Ministry of Interior, Bundesministerium, and also manufacturers including Motorola, Ericsson, Airbus, Frequentis, and many other names very well known to you. We try to work together, to collaborate, to provide environment where we can work together for better standardized future. We have our partnerships. One of our partners is EENA, and we have our big events. And our next big event is Critical Communications World in Helsinki, which is going to happen in 1 month time. And this is a big and serious event. Everybody will be there, so whoever is interested in critical communications shouldn't miss this event. Well, thanks for this introduction. And now I would invite Tero Pesonen, my vice chair, to tell you more about information-centric broadband future and how to prepare yourself. Tero, please.
Yes, thank you very much. Let us look a little bit into the past. I recently discussed with the head developer of radio communications and field operations from the Finnish police, and he reminded me that, have I noticed that actually the communicational field has been more or less the same for nearly 100 years. Nearly 100 years it has been voice-focused, with additions over the time, but centrally it has been voice-centric. And now, when we think of the world where we are moving into, it's information-centric. There, the voice is one data stream among the others. There we have the data creation part, where we have voice, we have text, we have video, we have haptic, we have all the senses humans have, as well as all those things the machines and other sensory networks, databases, other data sources can provide us. Then we have the transport and the refining part with artificial intelligence, potentially human intervention, data mergers, information creation. basically changing the data into information and then delivering it further to be in the presentation form, presenting information to the users. Now in this case, as we have here on the slide, to two information receivers, two different informations based on the same information sources which were originally there. Be it maybe voice and haptic for a human, and then maybe IoT data command for some device, but based on the same data sources and then the intelligence in the between, which has taken decisions on the data and turned it into information. That's the information value chain. There we are working then obviously with a whole lot of challenges. Well, we have a lot of challenges. In the past, this was absolutely out of question. I'm sure that already 100 years ago, one would have quite liked to have the solutions we have today, or the solutions we will be having in the next couple of years. But the technology was the limiting factor. Still, we are working with the connectivity. We work with 5G, we work with 6G, we work with satellite communications in order to bring the coverage and the connection to everywhere at all times. We work in the data acquisitions on the sensors and IoT and the standards there to make it available, and as well as obviously we do work a lot on the technology layer on cloud and AI and edge computing and so on. I'm sure that we will hear a little bit more about all those things. As an engineer, that's fine. That's cool. That's nice. All you need to do is just do it, basically. But we do have a lot of challenges and a lot of difficult challenges where I sincerely ask all you agencies to help out. Quite strongly, we have questions on regulation. EU is creating, for instance, AI directive right now. As far as I understand, from privacy point of view, for us citizens, it will be just wonderful. It will be protecting our privacy at all times, but unfortunately, it may be also protecting it at all cost. And that's the point we, as a community in critical communication and public safety, as those persons who are there to help people when they are in trouble, to make sure that those regulations also allow us to do the job we have been tasked to do in the best possible way. So that's in those kind of challenges we have on the regulation side. Then there are the roles and responsibilities. Whose job is to do what? Who should handle that? Who owns the data? Who is allowed to see what? Quite typically, in many countries, for instance, police data has a certain security classification, and fire side has a bit lower one. And there's a difficulty in passing information from one security classification to another one, even though the information content as such might be public, say an address. Everyone knows where the smoke is coming from. So there we have a lot of challenges in trying to look at how the operational procedures and governance is. And then the third one is quite rightly also human factors. How do we humans operate and take into account the information-centric way of working as we have been used to run a certain way of working and processes for the last 100 years. Plus, probably a whole lot of other things which we just haven't found yet. We have the known knowns, we have the known unknowns, and then we have the unknown unknowns. But let me share you an example to put you a bit on the map on this, and then let this sink in your minds and impact your way of working in the next coming weeks and months and years. So this is an example of an information value chain, references to Hannu Rantanen scientific work already I think it was in the past millennium. But I think that this is a good example of a information value chain. There's an incident. In this particular case, it was a Chernobyl type of nuclear power station, which happened to be on the other side of the Finnish border. And unfortunately, their tradition was not to give a ring when something happened. Although there was a phone line, but the tradition was not really to call when something was wrong, only to call when everything was fine. So therefore, there had to be another sensoring system to measure differences in radiation. So that's the data one. And then data two was then information systems on other ingredients in the society. Now, when one noticed that from the data one, okay, there is a change in the radiation, meaning that there has been an incident and one has to do something. We get to the analysis part, and the first part of the analysis in this particular case was to estimate that where will the radiation go? Basically, where will it rain? And that's the job for the Meteorological Institute to estimate. So that's changing first data into information. Then the next thing is like, who is impacted? Basically, children. Third question is, where are the children? If it's a weekday, if it's during the day, they're mainly in the schools and kindergartens. What do they need? They need iodine. Where's that? That's in the pharmacies. How much it is in the pharmacies? Where are the pharmacies? Where are the schools? Who can deliver the medication from the pharmacies to the schools and have it delivered? And that's the analysis part. And as a result, it starts becoming as information to police officers, to the firefighters, to go to the particular pharmacy, take the stuff and the drugs to the particular school, information to the schools to make sure that they deliver it, and so on and so on. This is an example of information value chain. Now on the technology, we are able to do this all automatically. Now it's a question whether we start harvesting these things. In TCCA side, what are we doing? What is our share in making this happen? What have we been doing so far is obviously we've been running the connectivity part. We do that in 3GPP, in 4G, 5G, 6G standardization. Plus we work on these white papers to help to enable people to notice what kind of applications, what do you need to pay attention in order to be able to run them. We also work like what does it make a need in order to make a network mission critical, that you can actually trust your life on it. You are able to make sure that the information gets and reaches the right people. Further, we work on the standardization, we work on spectrum issues, and a whole lot of other topics like massive mission critical video, how to handle the congestion if there are hundreds of video sources being displayed from a disaster, how to provide connectivity utilizing satellites, and quite many more others in other fields. And with this, I come to the summary. So now we are here with the information-centric operation at our doorstep. Question is it a revolution? Is it a chaos? But in any case, it's time to address these challenges now. And the only way we can do it is together. So the success is in cooperation.
Thank you, Tero. Thank you very much. Very nicely put. Success in cooperation, and that really opens the door to Wolfgang, who is going to tell us more on the practical side and more about cooperation that is happening between European countries regarding broadband mission critical communications. Wolfgang.
Yeah, thank you. Mladen. So actually it's me talking more than 1 hour, so because Mladen announced at the beginning that it will be 2 hours. It's about Broadway, towards pan-European mission-critical broadband communication, and as Mladen already mentioned, it's practical information. So we had a chance to participate in this pre-procurement project or pre-commercial procurement project, and the main aim of this project was to start an innovation-driven program for interoperability by design for pan-European collaboration. So the idea is, okay, you have your national infrastructure based on mission-critical services, and we just get it to the next level, say, okay, if there are things that require interoperability, like huge disasters, and I do have some examples later on, then why not using that new technology to just let people collaborate and communicate using their own equipment. And this enhances, of course, situational awareness, because you just use your devices that you used to have in an incident, and you just cross the board and you continue your communication in your talk group. The other main idea was to support the creation of a European standards-based ecosystem. Tero already mentioned that kind of ecosystem to guide the future of our mission-critical communications. So having something that's actually European-based, and thanks to the funding we received from this Horizon 2020 project, we were able to implement and to showcase something, and had actually a great time with practitioners. In order to get this ecosystem done, we as Frequentis started a consortium. So here you see all the partners and the subcontractors. So for instance, we had emergent solutions providing mission-critical application services. We had other partners like Harris and Crosscall to provide parts of the infrastructure. And of course, most important, partners that provide us the telco side, so 4G, 5G. We had even 5G in one of our tests or trials to just see, okay, how does this interwork with the infrastructure, and how can we make up a 3GPP compliant solution for Europe. Of course, there needs to be interworking functions, so we do have deployments in Europe that use Tetra, and they will be in place for another, let's say, 5 to 10 years. So it's quite important to not only make sure that you have the capabilities that the system that you're using right now provides in a new environment, but also to make sure that the transition works smoothly and that you can integrate those new services. So what makes up our ecosystem? What functions and capabilities do we have? So most important, interoperability, because it's a cross-border idea. And during this Broadway project, we got the chance to showcase together with Airbus how this interoperability works. So it was 3 steps in this project. We started with defining the architecture, providing this, let's say, paperwork at the beginning. The next stage was to get prototypes implemented, and the third step was then the 2 finalists had to show that there is interoperability and they can work together with features like audio and video group calls. So video might be something new compared to Tetra across authorities and countries. So it's really not just in a single lab environment, but really crossing the border and see how this works in emergency situations and reconnect, reselect networks. And of course, also access to specific data. Like Tero mentioned that you have IoT, perhaps you have drones. You need to access all these things, even if you are, let's say, connecting from abroad. So this was also part of this project to showcase how this works. And one important thing to make it happen, and you know me perhaps talking a lot of NG 112, is standardization. So even here we have a very important standardization process from 3GPP. and there's also need to certify systems. So we tried in this project to be really 100% standard conform and make also sure that the things work smoothly together by just checking, okay, are we compliant? Yeah, this allows us to extend operational mobility. So we had situations where users roam into other infrastructure. As I said before, so crossing the border could mean that you have different mobile network operators that support you this mission-critical infrastructure. Very important, also the integration of satellite communication, and also seeing this on Tero's presentation. So for backhaul connectivity. So just think of you have to deploy a kind of technical bubble or in an area that has no backhaul connection because of flooding, whatever. Then you may use satellite in order to connect to backhaul and to make sure that you have communication to the control room or whatever agency is part of such an operation. We also, because you may have with broadband other capabilities on your end device, we also integrated mobile device management solutions, so to make sure that, okay, all the applications that are deployed are not just downloaded from an app store, but are really certified to participate in such a thing, and this would mean you have to manage this using EMM. I mentioned the transition phase, so I think it's very important there to keep the existing functionality, even if you get into the new innovative arena where you have smart office, drones, intranet, tactical networks, databases, situational awareness, IoT solutions, all the fancy stuff, and as engineer, I like them. You also have to consider the migration. Yeah? So there's integration and transitions, and systems need to coexist, and we had a chance in our consortium to have a partner that provided such a solution, also to make sure that even if you select your talk group on a mobile device that connects via 4G, 5G to an application service, you can also have participants in the same talk group using Tetra equipment. So getting to the real cool story or the cool stuff. So we had a ship fire trial in July 2022, and it was at port of Malaga. So we had 40 public protection disaster relief organizations joining this operation or this training or trial, and there were 8 local organizations. So it was an international training, quite tough week of evaluation and training in the summer. And the story was that there was a ship that caught fire, and local firefighters together with international support ambulances and police collaborate. So they just join in and use their own devices and can communicate via mission-critical application services. So I would like to invite you to join me to watch a video to see how this operation went. So I ask the technicians to just start the video. Thanks.
We live in a really turbulent time. We have a lot of disasters. We can see the climate changes. Cross-border response is something that we're going to see more and more every year now. Without communication, there is no way you can have successful mission. So that is the basis for everything.
The idea of Broadway is to evaluate the technical feasibility of a future European-wide mission-critical broadband communication system for first responders. It's a unique project by its own rights.
One of the objectives of Broadway was to have standardized solution for interconnecting mission-critical services. We made a lot of progress, but is it ready to be deployed?
Here in Malaga, we are executing a fire scenario on a ship. It starts with an emergency call of the ship crew.
Here is the integrated control room in Malaga. We have got a fire on the ship Isla de Albarán and 4 people are injured.
Fire brigades of the Spanish area of Malaga City and nearby are working together with French fire forces and European fire extinguishing experts. Local ambulances and police help to secure injured passengers and bring them safely to hospitals.
Very fire scenario that we have seen today really showed us what new technologies can do in missions like this. On one place, we have seen the rescuers from all around Europe. We have seen different fire brigades, different rescuers, different first aid teams.
It's the closest that we can get to have something on the market. We have to keep going and working with vendors to see if the standards are right, if the products are right, and if we can make adjustments either on the standards or on the products.
International collaboration can be executed thanks to communication systems that can work across borders.
It makes no sense for every country to develop absolutely every possible resource. If neighboring country has those resources, then we can combine those resources and then we have better, cheaper and more efficient solution than to develop absolutely everything in every country within the EU.
We are willing to deploy a PPDR mobile broadband network. So we are moving from legacy technology to new technology. If we can combine this improvement at the national level with improvement at the international level, being able to work like as home when we are crossing the border back and forth, I think it would be an amazing achievement.
Mostly I'm impressed with the easiness of communication with different groups, how easy it was to put the users in the groups and those groups can communicate really easily from all around Europe. That was the best thing for me.
Rescue procedures can differ country to country, and it's really important to coordinate it because everybody has to know what's their actual role in the operation.
We can match groups from inside and outside the affected area. We have a direct communication, we have a direct way. This is very important that we can react fast, and this is what we needed for all important new disasters like flooding, like wildfire.
I am most impressed by the possibility of sending of the rich media. For example, pictures, videos, broadcasting, or these things, because we don't have this possibility now.
Improvements on networks, especially when commercial networks will be included in future, are needed for Broadnet.
Definitely, there are some improvements considering the hardware, how easy it is to use something or how complicated it could be to use something, considering what we are doing as mountain rescue, what firefighters are doing, considering our equipment and gear we have. But overall, this is a good bet, definitely.
We will definitely invest in future developments after Broadway. We as a consortium have already committed to continue to progress on the solutions and the systems as we have started here in Broadway.
Okay, quite impressive. I was not there, so for me it's always nice to see that things are being tested in real life scenarios. So usually I'm doing the tests in a lab, and we found some, not finished yet, because I would like to share some lessons learned and also provide kind of checklist. So when we did this, you've seen that it works, yeah, and people were impressed how broadband communication helps. So the lessons we've learned is very important standardization. That's very key for interoperability and mobility. So we need also some certification for these devices and these services that are part of such trials and real operations, of course. And we've also seen that the usage of different LTE 5G networks with roaming and handover is working, yeah? But there's room for improvement. So it really depends how the roaming setup or agreement between the operators is defined. And I think Tero mentioned that previously that there is the need for a legal framework for these pan-European systems. This needs to be shaped, of course. And what we've also seen is when talking about new technology and new capabilities, yeah, it's very important to involve the end users, so the people that use the devices at the end. And in international cooperation, we always see some language barriers. So even if you have the best technology in place, there might be some issues understanding each other. And I would provide you also a kind of checklist when starting mission-critical communication. So here are some ideas to think of when considering mission-critical communication. So like having a concept for LTE and 5G network. So coverage is very important. And as I said before, roaming agreement. So national and international. So it depends on how you use or integrate with mobile network operators. So that needs a very good concept. And there's also how to deploy, running a multi-MCS versus multi-tenant single MCS in a country could also be something you would have to decide. There are a lot of pros and cons. We may discuss in another session. Also, considering regularly frequency bands. So not just having these dedicated bands, but also the other ones that are available, because then you may get perhaps more bandwidth, more data rate for your applications. And very important, I need to repeat myself, 3GPP standard compliance. Yeah? So if you want to ensure interoperability, if you want to ensure service quality, so it needs to be standards-based. And perhaps you get a chance to meet my colleagues at Frequentis booth 35, so where we have a control room solution that interworks on the one hand with the NG112 and on the other hand with MCX. So it's for us, it's really important there to get those interfaces standardized to make sure that we can provide information, or we can broker information from the left side, from the public to the professional side. Thanks.
Thank you, Wolfgang. And I forgot to congratulate you on your award received yesterday night.
Thank you very much.
It's always a pleasure to see you. Well deserved. Thank you. We have, during this presentation, we mentioned a number of times MCX. Who does know from the audience what is MCX? Duncan, would you be so kind to say a few words about what is MCX?
Of course, I can say a few words about MCX, Mladen. Thank you. MCX is the generic term for mission-critical push-to-talk, PTT, mission-critical video, and mission-critical data, which all get combined together in terms of the 3GPP standard suite. You've got to remember, I suppose, that the standard is evolutionary. I mean, you go back to when the UK first started the Emergency Services Network, where it released 10, released 11, released 12, and a lot of what people were doing in mission-critical PTT was non-standardized in a way. We've got to a point now where we can see from the work that Broadway have been doing, that Wolfgang has just shown, that we're at a much better place in terms of standardization. So MCX is PTT, video, and data all wrapped up within the 3GPP standard.
And PTT is push-to-talk. Thank you very much. Thanks, Duncan. Well, that's a good explanation. But there are many companies offering applications that work push to talk. So you just have your mobile phone, and there is the feature provided you can push. And you all know that in critical communications, the essence of critical communications is one to many, meaning I pushed and talk, and many users are listening to me. Public safety, first responders, and others. Wolfgang, what's the difference? Why is MCX standardized better, if it is, than all kinds of different applications that are offered in the market as PTT applications?
Yeah, good one. I think it's much better if you have a standardized solution because there are features like preemption, quality of service. So all those things need to be there. And if you just run your things over the top, they may look fancy, for instance. You may have a nice user interface. But if there's a congestion in the network and you don't know how to interface with the network, they probably don't work. Yeah, so there's a lot of other things like using the infrastructure more efficient, like multicast broadcast services. Yeah, so if you cannot access those things because you do not understand or follow the standard in order to connect to your evolved packet core, then yeah, perhaps it works, but you may not get the experience that you know from other, the user experience that you know from other technologies like Tetra, for instance.
Yep. And we all know, now we talk about critical communications moving to public operators' networks. And we all know whenever is something wrong, the public operators' network is down. You cannot make a call, you cannot get anybody. So it's just, I understand about what two of them are talking about, to provide a resilient network within a public safety network, within a public network that will be able to deliver all the features that are requested from critical communications. What we mentioned in the beginning, resilience, redundancy, and others. You mentioned a number of times standardization. TCCA is very much involved in standardization process as market representation partner of 3GPP. Tero, could you tell us a little bit more about the importance of the work on standardization and how MCX was introduced from release 13, and then where are we now actually, and what are we doing there to provide that general standards incorporate all critical communication features?
Well, let's first recognize that there are approximately 7 billion consumers using mobile services, which are using the same standards and technologies. And then there are, if I'm really generous, I might say that there are maybe 100 million first responders, critical communication users from all the sectors. That means that we have to have one common voice to be heard. The others have been very positive on us. They also have children and they also have family, and they all want to be rescued when they call 112. So there's a positive attitude, but it means that exactly therefore we have to have one common standard. We cannot go there and ask for multiple solutions. At the same time, if we don't have standards, then we either have a customer lockup in certain device technology, and the nation may be dependent on whether, like we have been now hearing with the equal 2G problem, that one day the product isn't just there, and then the solution is gone. But if it's really a standardized product, it's multi-vendor market, there is healthy ecosystem, there are other products continuously providing service. Now, you asked how it has evolved in release 13. We were able to start a discussion properly on this MCPTT in 14. The MC video, MC data were introduced, and the suit was brought in place. In 15, also needs from the railway community started to be included, and so on. It has been expanding. Now we are working on additional coverage options like satellite connectivity directly in the handset. we are working on device-to-device capabilities to enable also, while satellites provide coverage when we see the sky, then device-to-device relay and multi-hop then provide coverage when we are underground, with the intention to be able to have this information-centric operation available at all times.
Thank you, Tero. Well, maybe this is the moment to ask the audience if there is any questions related to what we were talking so far. We will have a few more topics to cover, but if there is any questions related to standardization, to process, to MCX, to implementation of critical communications, don't be shy. Ask whatever you always wanted to know, but never dare to ask. Benoit.
Yes, please don't hesitate. We don't break, even for hard questions.
And we don't bite.
Yes, thank you for your talk. We speak a lot about NG112 here at the EENA conference, so perhaps can you say a few words about how MCX is like integrated within that? I think at the standardization level also there has been talks about the relation between broadband-based MCX and NG112.
I would say that a major point is played by control rooms here in this, but I will defer to let's say Duncan to say a few words, then Tero if you want, and Wolfgang.
I'll certainly say a few words on that, Mladen. I mean, we coming from the UK, we've got quite a few scars around the emergency services network and where we're going. And a key learning from that has been that we've got 43 police forces, we've got 49 fire and rescue services, 12 ambulance services who all need to be able to connect into the emergency services network from a control room perspective. And they probably all together have completely different, well, not completely, but different solutions. Therefore, there are different things that need to be thought through in terms of connecting the control room into the emergency service network. And making that connection then connects back into the NG112, NG999 in the UK network. So what we're finding, what's been found is we definitely need to be very clear in terms of the interface, the control room interface that connects into the MCX solution. That's really, really important that the vendors all understand that and they can then start to develop solutions that are common in being able to do that. They've got their innovation on top of that in terms of the user interface they have in the control rooms, but a common standard to do that, a common digital standard is really, really important. And once you've got that proper digital connection into the MCX solution, then all of the NG112, the video, the data that's coming from the public that you then might want to, to share with the responders, you've then got that interface and you don't have any sort of drop-off going from one network to another. If you look at Tetra at the moment, being able to provide rich data, provide video into a Tetra network is really not possible. You need to have somebody who's got some sort of broadband device to do that. MCX solutions, take away issues around security, issues around devices which are not, not part of the fabric of a secure solution, of a mission-critical solution. So MCX does that. So a key lesson is making sure that those control room interfaces are well-defined and well understood by your suppliers out there, whether it's the dispatch supplier, the recording supplier, the mobile data supplier, the actual CAD supplier itself. All those people will want at some point in time to be able to interface in, to exchange information from the control room out to the responders and allow that bridge between the citizen and the responders as well.
Thank you, Duncan. This is, Benoit, this is why we started discussion with Christina to make a joint working group between TCCA and EENA, because you know the things from one side and we work on the things from the other side. So I guess Christina is chairing the AMTEL committee, which brought NG112 standard, and we are maintaining Tetra standard, and we are actively involved in broadband standards. So I think that would be the right combination to make a joint working group to work on this thing and provide this interface, standardized interfaces to transfer this. Anybody wants to add something on?
Well, one important thing to recognize, which is a difference with the mission-critical broadband services to the past. In the past, obviously, if a person in emergency was using a mobile service to call, then that was using a commercial mobile service to reach the PSAP. Now also the help is using in some cases, potentially using the same network. So there's a multiple interest in a society to make sure that that network is robust and operates at all times, everywhere. So every advancement there is done, every bit of further resilience there is done for public safety, it is done also for the citizens. And I, as a citizen, I actually find that quite nice.
Thanks, that's a good point.
Just a quick point on that, Tero. I mean, one of the important things is, and one of the things that the various projects around Europe and around the world are doing is, whilst it might be the radio access network of the mobile operators that are being used, they generally do have an enhanced packet core. So the actual core network is separate to the one that's normally used by the commercial network. That provides a lot of additional resilience. Take France as an example, they're going to use two networks, Bouygues and Orange. So again, they've got resilience in terms of from a network perspective, and in, you know, when worst case scenario, they could probably get access to the other networks there. So a lot of thinking is going in by governments and projects and programs that are delivering MCX solutions around the globe, and some great thinking going on.
Wolfgang, you want to add here?
Actually, not much to add. So we as Frequentis, we're right in the middle. And I agree with everything that you said. So it's perhaps a new challenge for the control room and also for the control room operational people, because you get a lot of new information into the control room. And we have to make sure that we provide the right information to the call taker and then later on provide the right information to the officer on the street. And that's also challenging for us. And actually, in the past, we had quite well-defined interfaces. Yeah? So there was the interface towards this system, you plug in a cable, and there was the interface towards that one, you plug in a cable, and you know where the borders are. Now with broadband communication, there are no borders anymore. Everything's IP, and I think at the end we will have SIP end-to-end from the calling person or citizen towards the officer.
Yeah, you reminded me on another topic now. Very good point.
Okay.
For example, with Tetra or with some narrowband, you have your radio. It's standardized, but it's developed a special operating system, if that's called, for that radio. That radio operates that and has some features which are used for many features, nice features, but that's a limited set of features. Now we are talking, like we all have our Play Stores and Google Plays and however it's called with Apple. There will be applications. We are entering also the world of applications, I think, regarding critical communications, and which makes one thing much more complicated. This is about testing and certification. So how in the future, it was simple with Tetra, you get infrastructure, you get number of radios of different manufacturers, you have the standardized set of features, you test them, if they work, you certify them, that's fine. Because, bear in mind, being in accordance with standard, that doesn't mean that you have provided everything that is written in standard. That means that what you have provided, it is in accordance with standard. 2 features, 3 features, not more than that. Now with all complexity of usage and standards, I think we come to that testing and certification problem, and how testing and certification will look like in the future, well, in the broadband world. You don't have to be wizards and to tell the future, but just an idea how it is going to work. Maybe you, Wolfgang, as an industry, you are quite close to this problem.
Actually, the coolest thing would be that I have a kind of conformance test suite in the cloud, and I connect with my application to that test suite, and I get a nice certificate I can download and show I'm compliant. I think we are not there yet, but I think there is a lot of effort also on the NG112 side. So there's a need of new ways to make sure that your application is certified. Yeah? Because in the past you said you had a special device and it was actually certified when you bought it. With a mobile device, right, today you can just download an app. Yeah? So I think there's a need for that, and at ETSI there's an effort going on, and with our partner in Emergent Solutions, for instance, they also work on certification tools or compliance test tools to make sure that it works. Yeah? But it will change. It's not just connecting your device to an infrastructure and say, okay, yeah, I can press BTT. It's much more. Yeah?
Tero, TCCA is involved in plug tests, so ETSI, and in cooperation with Global Certification Forum. Can you say a few words briefly about this?
Absolutely. Just reflecting, Wolfgang was here saying how important it is that the applications and the services are certified, how much benefit it brings to us. It brings the assurance that it actually fulfills things, that there is the promise of interoperability. But let's face it, it's not for free. So it's not for free for the industry or anyone to do that. So therefore we, as I am from a public safety operator, and we as the users, we have the obligation and responsibility to require this in our purchasing processes. We have to make sure that we do not accept someone who's free riding, someone who's not fulfilling the requirements. We have to make sure that there is a reason for industry and those who actually provide those services to us, upon we build our operations, and they have an incentive to do things right. And that is in our hands. We on TCCA side, we do everything we can to enable the system to be there, that there is the certification process, there are the test cases, and you have even the text to put into your procurement papers, like, please fulfill this requirement. So we can do that, but it's your job to make sure that it's there in the paper.
Thanks, Tero. We are closing to the end of this session, although I promised an additional hour, but it can be only by popular demand. I cannot impose this. So, the way forward, how you see the future, how you see the development, and what do you believe should be done before anybody goes to the next step of moving to broadband? And I guess you should be the right person to try to answer this question, having in mind your consultancy history and experience.
Yes, having worked on the UK ESM program for about 7 years before I took some
Well, UK
retirement.
ESM, I can ask you additional question about, because there were pioneering movement to broadband, and now we all can read there are some stall that it's not going as it was planned in the beginning. So if you want, you can comment on this as well. Yeah.
Really quickly, it was a very rocky road, and the ambition, who's in the room? The ambition was wrong. You cannot just go place a contract in 2015 and expect by 2019 you can just roll out. You know, that was, everybody knows that was wrong, obvious. The standard was still immature, the thinking was very immature. Industry, again, was immature in its approach. So lots of things that were wrong. But if you look at what's happened with Broadway, the key thing around that Broadway actually teaches us is you can get major organizations working together, Frequentis, Airbus, and a whole stack of other partners to deliver this. But testing is really important. Having a test bed, being able to do trials, to be able to roll it out in the right sort of way. I would certainly recommend anybody looking at doing a broadband-based solution to roll out the network, to have a data alongside the current PTT, to have a way of actually having interworking. All countries that are moving to broadband now have an interworking solution where either Tetra or P25 can interwork with the MCX solution. It allows you to learn. It allows you to do a migration a lot more smoothly. So have a test bed. Have a way of actually looking at the applications and making sure you don't have applications that interfere with the primary mission critical application. And really have a vision as to a really clear migration plan. You can't do it in a big bang.
Thanks a lot. Wolfgang, do you want to add a few additional
you were
thoughts?
asking for the future, so actually I see the future.
I know you're, sorry for interrupting,
Yeah.
you as an industry, you have a wish to sell as soon as possible, I can imagine, but still we may think about what should be the realistic approach to...
Yeah, I just wanted to say you will see the future if you meet us at the Frequentis booth. No, it's, as Duncan said, so I think before we start with all these brand new things, we also need to make sure that we can certify, that we can get all these things to operate in a way that it can be used by our customers.
Thanks. Tero, you want to conclude?
I would like to say that If those who are, well, most of us are old enough to remember the time before Google. And if you go back then we had the tendency, if we wanted to know something, we had this thing called library. And there were these things called pub quiz things, where those who happened to remember things by heart were the kings of the joint. And then Google happened. Nobody saw it coming, it happened, and then everyone said, of course it is like this. This is fully natural. And I'm seeing that here in the chain of rescue, in the public safety communication, we are nearing our Google moment. We don't know exactly yet what it is. But once it happens, then it's absolutely normal. It's natural. But we can see symptoms of it. The NG112 equal second generation 5G, the things how our children work and live their lives, how ChatGPT just showed up suddenly, and so on. All those things are coming together into this information-centric world. And please, just make it happen.
Brilliant for the end. Is there any question anybody would like to comment? No? Well, thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed this presentation. And let's give some applause to our presenters.